Hi, it's Tim Clark, End Times Matrix News, and we are coming at you live today on May 19th. And this show is called The Belly of the Beast. It's going to be focused on the Temple Mount, the Omphalos Stone, what it really represents. There's a lot more to this story. We were talking about that last week, and we're going to see a lot more to this related. We're going to go through all kinds of charts and maps and things. Really going to be interesting and connected all together with the help of the Holy Spirit as usual to help put it all together and make some sense for folks out there. So I'm going to go ahead and highlight Chris's box. We have Kris and we have Heidi's joining us today. Hi, Heidi.
Hey.
And there's Kris as usual with
Hello.
her. Yeah, there she is. And we're going to get started with Chris's presentation here and progress, and we'll just jump in and out at different sections as some commentary needs to be added on additionally. So go right ahead, Kris.
All right. Hello. Today we are going to be talking about the belly of the beast, the navel of the world, and actually this is the foundation stone. Sorry. The Omphalos Stone, the Temple on the Mount, Cave of ZEDEKIAHS. That's what his name was changed to. It was really Meta-Yahoo. Under the Temple, Saturn, cult worship, and the return of Christ. So we're going to kind of show what's around the temple. Why is it so important? What happened in the Bible? What verses are tied to that area, and where did Jesus die on the cross? And so we're going to just discuss that to help everyone understand what the Temple of the Mount is. This is the inside of the Temple of the Mount, the Dome of the Rock, and this is a big stone that's just open, and underneath it is a cave. So here's another picture with this hole. This is the navel of the world of the Omphalos Stone. And it's open here. I do believe this is tied to Mithra's rock and the Ogdode, which is the 8. That's why the temple is an 8-sided temple. So this is the Temple of the Mount. This is Hinnom's Hinnom Valley, which is also Gena. Jesus talked about Gena 11 times in the Bible, but it's translated, this word translated is Gena, and it means hell. So this is literally hell, and I take Jesus' words literal. The valley of sacrifice to Saturn, Moloch around the temple was around this temple, and then there's Golgotha is around here. There's the Golgotha. This is the Temple of the Mount. This is Valley of Hinnom, and this is Kidron. I wanted to show a couple of verses that talked about this, but this is to the Dead Sea, this area here. In the Bible, it talks about the Valley of Remphan connected to this valley, but on any maps that you find, I don't think we're going to be able to find exactly where it is. We can only kind of guess, but I do think it's in this area here. It possibly could be the Kidron Valley. I don't know, but we have some real interesting information on this and some Bible verses. This is a coin with Apollo sitting on the Omphalos Stone at Delphi. The Omphalos is a type of religious stone artifact. It means navel in Greek. And so there's a Greek story about Zeus sending his eagles to fly over the world and finding the center of the world. And so this stone is connected to Babylon, and it is connected to this Delphi thing. It's connected to the raising of every time they would raise up a king and they would try to raise up the Antichrist, like with Hiram Abiff. We'll get into that too, and how the Freemasons are tied to this temple too, and some proof of that information. Heidi, did you have something on the Amphala stone? A quote?
Yeah, and just to piggyback on what you said about that stone being important to all the religions of the world, the Jews, the Muslims, and the Masons, because that is a religion. The Masons and the Jews, and that stone is like the focal point. There's a reason why it's called the belly of the beast, and it is known as the navel of the world, because all the everything derives from that as far as their viewpoint is concerned. It's the foundation stone, apparently, that was under the Ark of the Covenant, if that's correct.
Yeah.
Correct me if I'm not.
Yeah, that is correct.
And yeah, and what's really interesting is that stone, and I'm just going to read a quote from the Zohar, which is what the Kabbalists say about that stone, but they say, in the Holy Zohar, the principal work of the Kabbalist mystics relates, when the Holy One, blessed be He, was about to create the world, He, and this is what they believe, He detached one precious stone from underneath His throne of glory and plunged it into the abyss. One end of it remained fastened therein, while the other end stood out. Out of the latter, the world started, spreading itself to the right and to the left and into all directions. And that stone is called the Hashatiyah, the foundation stone. Some of the wise men of Israel say the stone is called Shatiyah, which in Hebrew means drinking, because beneath it is hidden the source of all the springs and fountains from which the world drinks its water. So, according to Kabbalists and all the, mystery religions of the world, that stone is very, very important. And that is the stone with which they believe the world was derived. So it's just really interesting that it's right there at the Dome of the Rock, and why it's so important for the Masons to have that temple being rebuilt there.
Mm-hmm.
But first, before the temple's going to be rebuilt, that Dome of the Rock has to be destroyed. So they have plans to destroy that Dome of the Rock, and I had made a video about that. I believe that they're going to do it fairly soon, because in order for their Antichrist to arise, or their Messiah, or their holy person to arise, that dome has to be destroyed. And I recently shared with Tim and Kris that I had a dream where I saw that, and this is possibly how CERN ties into this too. In my dream, I saw that CERN destroyed the Dome of the Rock. And then I heard the numbers 3, 4, and 5, 6. So when I woke up, I added those two numbers, the 3 and the 4 and the 5 and the 6, and that ended up equaling 711. And apparently 711 is the hidden 911. And if anybody knows the significance of that, that's all about destroying the old to bring in the new. And I know, Kris, you were saying that you explained it better than I did about the 711. Maybe you want to share about the 7 means the number 7 in the Zayin means it is the world to come. So doesn't that represent the new golden age of the Antichrist? Isn't that what the 7 represents?
Yeah. It is also, it's septum. It is 7. It is September is the 7th month in the Roman calendar. And if you look up history with septum and what does it mean to them, it represents 7 planets and these fallen angels. That's what it represents. And so we've gone over the 7 before too, how it represents this rigged up connection with the Saturn, which was the resurrected Jupiter, and the Ursa Major, and the connections to that with the pole star, because that's a focal point too. And I do believe that all of that is connected to CERN and some type of electromagnetic energy or whatever. So it's, and Jupiter is a lightning god. This is their messiah. They worship Jupiter, which is a lightning god. He's connected to the sun god, with the story with Set and Horus. They fight over that throne. And I'll show a little bit about that. I don't want to get too far off into that or whatever. But this has to do with DNA too. It has to do with the tree that was in the Garden of Eden. and so yeah, that 7/11 is very significant. It is going to be on the Jewish calendar in September for us. Our calendar, their calendars, 5776, 2016, and then 7/11, and I believe that's around the time of the Weeping of Tammuz, which is the bull god, which is, the son of Nimrod, Semiramis, and so, yeah, that's a very significant, that 7/11 for sure. And hopefully when we do another show, we can get more into that too, because, we're connecting so many dots. It's hard to go over all of it, all of the pieces, but we can probably streamline that eventually and kind of pack it in and show all those connections to that. But this temple here actually was a Jupiter temple. It was destroyed by the Romans. It was a temple there at one point. And so just keep in mind that there was temples in Egypt, and they had sun and moon gods. There was an exodus, and then these temples were built later on. And I want to show some significance to the sun god and the moon god throughout this video too. But Mithra was born from a rock. This is Mithra, and she's being born from, or she is being born from the rock. This is Mithra killing the bull that represents Osiris. It's the Apis bull, the Ka. And this, you see the crab here biting the phallus. That's the story of Osiris, that a crab, and this has to do with the constellations, all of this does. So the crab is takes his phallus, he was castrated, and then Jupiter rose up into his place, which was his son. This is a Jupiter temple here. They were all over in caves, and here's one in a cave underneath. If you look up Jupiter worship or Mithra Jupiter worship, you'll see all the caves and everything. This is the symbolism of it. And the reason that I showed this picture here is because I wanted to connect this with Osiris and show that it's the same story. Just later on, they had different pictures of it, and different cultures. I mean, some of these gods and these people in the Bible, actually, it tells you they lived 1,000 years. So their cultures did change depending on where they were, and they did change these things, but it's the same thing. So here's Mithra too, as the lion. He's holding the key of space and time, the key, and he has the X on what he's standing on there, the Ptah. And this is Tubal-Cain, which is Ptah. The Freemasons worship Tubal-Cain as Ptah, as Tubal-Cain, as Hiram-Abiff, as the bloodline of Tubal-Cain. And I'll show that later on, how they wanted to sacrifice him and raise up the Antichrist back then, but something happened back then. And this is something that they want to do right now, again, during a certain alignment. All of these gods, Amon, Re, and Ptah, these represent the same thing here. Amon is Zeus. This is Amon. If you see Zeus in his statue or the temple of Jupiter, like this temple here, well, this is him in Egypt here. And we've talked about this connection too, to his throne with the resurrected Saturn connection here. And this is the Ogdoad, the egg. This egg represents the stone, I believe, in the Temple of the Mount, which is the foundation stone. That's why it's shaped 8 sides. See the 8 in the Star of Venus. Venus is phosphorus. It's Lucifer. It's the female side that was castrated, that was resurrected as Horus and Thoth Thoth and Isis as Horus. And so this is him. You know, the Khonsu is the moon god. Well, we know that the Muslims worship the moon god, and the temple on the mount represents the moon. It represents the moon god, and that's who they worship. So Khonsu represents Ptah. The Freemasons, they worship this too, and I'll show more of that too down below. So the verse here that I wanted. Did you want to say something, Heidi?
Oh, I was just going to say why it's so important to the Freemasons, because they believe in order for them to see the fulfillment of everything they've worked for, they believe that temple is, it's Solomon's temple is just pivotal to the Masons. They have to have that temple rebuilt in order for their Masonic and the world's Antichrist too. They don't call him the Antichrist; he's their savior. To be, to stand in the temple, and he's the focal point. That's why they believe that the key of Solomon is in that temple, and I believe it has something to do with the Ark of the Covenant, where it has to do with DNA and the changing of DNA, and it all ties into transhumanism. But I think that's the focal point of the end times, is going to be that Jerusalem, the international city, the city where I believe the false prophet's going to stand and put some sort of image where it's going to be an image of the beast that they will want everybody to worship. So this is a very important thing to all the religions, the Masons, the Muslims. It's just really significant.
Yeah, it is. I'll show later on how the Freemasons are tied to Egyptians and Egypt, their Book of the Dead, and that's all they believe in, that dark magic. I mean, it was spread throughout the world, but these Freemasons control everything. They control the temple through the Vatican. The Vatican will take over the temple and all. I have some pictures of that, and I want to connect that, how they have meetings in the cave underneath, and I'll show that in a little bit. But this Adonijah, how do you say that, Tim?
Adonijah.
Yeah,
Adonijah.
Mm-hmm.
He killed sheep and cattle and fatlings by stone of Zoheleth. Zoheleth is a Saturn stone. It means serpent. And it's beside En Rogel, and he called all his brothers the king's sons. Okay, so except for Solomon, because Adonijah he's Solomon's brother, and he actually did his own coronation and became king. But Solomon had him killed. He didn't ask David, for the blessing or anything like that. He just went and took it. And then Solomon had him killed. Well, this stone of his brother that he worshipped is here, in between Hinnom Valley and Kidron Valley, and this goes down to the Dead Sea. But this is just to point out that what this means. And Heidi, keep in mind that word you used on your quote about the stone in the Zohar. But this stone is right here. Here's the Temple Mount, and here's the Hinnom Valley, and here is where the stone is here. This is where all the Baal worship was. This is where people sacrificed their children to Baal, and the blood would go down this valley all the way down to the Dead Sea. And I've had my own theories on that, is that, the sea is also the abyss, and maybe the blood went in there where all the demons are, underneath. And we'll talk about the gates a little bit more, and the significance of going through the gates to worship Bel, and why people actually sacrifice animals and children to Bel, and what does the Bible say about that. But here's the word here in Hebrew, and this word it means the crawling serpent. It also means Saturn and stone. Here it is again, the serpent stone by Enrogel in 1 Kings 1:9. And here it is again. Here's the connection with the word in Arabic. Zual means Saturn. And this word is this word, and it's this word. And it's this word. So it is in that verb.
I believe that Zool was used in the Ghostbusters movie, for those who are...
Yeah.
And
I
so,
think so,
and it means Saturn. So
yeah.
I think that's interesting.
Yeah. So Zul means Saturn, and so the Bible is referring to Saturn and Venus in it, but you have to go through a lot to translate the words just to understand what they are and how significant they are to this area here. And I'm going to show the cave in a minute too that's underneath it. But here's just another reference. I translated this in Arabic from a translation here just to show it again, that this word means, in the Bible, means Saturn. It's a Zayin word. I thought that was interesting that when I looked it up, it was a Zayin word. And we know that the Zayin is the seventh letter. It is the world to come. It is going to be added to the Shin, which will be the fourth letter on the Shin. This is what the Jews wear on their head, on the telephone, on their head, and to connect to their God. And so the Vav on their head, the Vav, Vav, Vav is the Shin letter. It's in representation of the part of the Antichrist, in my opinion. And it's the Shin fire. The Shin is the leg of the bull, and the Shin represents the Ursa Major that's connected to opening the portal with CERN. Here's another picture of Hinnom Valley, Mount Zion. Oh, you know what? I forgot to point out something up here, that in this map, when Jesus was hung on the cross, the veil was torn, the temple was split, right here. So I just wanted to point that out. So a lot of things happened on here. Jesus was crucified here. Of course, he rose again. But here's where he prayed in the garden in Gethsemane. And then the Bible, talking about that stone, it talks about Kidron Valley and tells where it is. And this is the exact location of the Saturn stone. So Saturn worship is referenced here in this area. And this was the temple, and this is where Jesus was hung, and this was where the temple was split. The gate to the cave is over here in this area here. Near Damascus.
Yeah, and Kris, I just wanted to add to that whole what you said about the when Jesus was crucified, the veil was split in two, and that is just signifying that Jesus is no longer, he's not in a temple that was made with hands, and he dwells in us, in our temples, our bodies, by his Spirit, when we accept him as our Lord. And that's one thing that the Christians are, there's a part of the, popular Christianity that is very much wanting to promote the rebuilding of the temple. And you have to ask yourself the question, why would they want to be promoting the rebuilding of the temple when Jesus said, I don't dwell in a temple made with hands? So why are you joining with the Jews that want to rebuild this temple and reinstitute the sacrifices when he is not, he's not in there. He's not there.
Mm-hmm.
And that's another reason why God said, you think this temple is going to be all wonderful, and then there's a real big push, popular push to say, oh, let's get behind this rebuilding of the temple. It's the plan of God. Well, it is in God's plan, but it's not his, his heart, because people are focusing on the building being, oh, that's where the presence of God was. But it's really not. It's Jesus, is in you by his Spirit is the presence of God. And it's going back to the law, going back under the law and going back to the Old Testament, and that's what is the part of the abomination.
Yeah, because they want to sacrifice in the new temple. They want to make sacrifices,
Yeah.
and we don't need to do that because Jesus was the sacrifice. He doesn't need to be sacrificed again. He doesn't need to raise again or anything like that. It's already finished, and he already did it. And so, and he saved all of us. And so, yeah, it's true that they are building this temple to another god. It doesn't have anything to do with Jesus Christ or Jesus being their God. Jesus was hung on the cross near that temple, and there was a lot of sacrifice. And so when we get more into this video, we'll talk about what's underneath that temple and the gates of hell and how it's connected to that too. But that's a very good point, Heidi.
Yeah, I think that it encompasses the general spiritual move that's going on right now in the world, the rejection of grace and mercy that we see in the United States and going back under the law and going back to Egypt. There's a flow back into Egypt and a rejection of Christ. So you're going back to the sacrifices of the, for sins when it was done by Christ once and for all, and the world is rejecting that. And they reject the stone, they reject the foundation stone, and that goes right back into the image of the statue in Daniel with the stone crashing at the feet and destroying the world's pagan idols. So it's a big overview of what's going on right now. The world is walking away from Jesus, and they want to go back to Egypt. So right ahead.
The foundation stone is not the cornerstone. That this is their way of saying, this is our depiction of the universe is as above, so below. The universe above represents the gates underneath. And they want to be out of the gate, and they want their God to come, and they want to have their golden age. So Jesus is the cornerstone. He's not the foundation stone, but he is the cornerstone, and they did reject him.
Yeah, I said
and so that's okay. The capstone, I think people know what you mean, but the capstone is been changed in the Bible. Cornerstone has been changed to capstone. The capstone represents the Ben stone, the two eyes of Horus and Set, the sun and the moon. It represents both of them coming together as one, and so that's what they were wanting to do. The phoenix is going to rise. They're going to worship their new god, and so, and we worship Jesus Christ. So yeah, the prophecy is being fulfilled right before our eyes with the Pope recognizing Palestine, and they've already signed the Trans-Pacific Partnership, which I'm sure has to do with agreeing with the temple and everything. That's why it's hidden, and we don't know anything about it. But the Valley of Hinnom is Gena. That's what it means translated. Jesus used the word Gena 11 times to describe the opposite to life in the kingdom. So Gena was initially where apostate Israelites and followers of various Baals and other Canaanite gods, including Moloch, sacrificed their children by fire. And these are the verses that are referenced to that. So we pointed it out on the map that this is where they sacrificed their children around this temple. And the blood would flow down. Hinnom is connected to Remphan. In Joshua 15:8, the border went up to the valley of Ben Hinnom and the slope of the Jebusite on the south, and the border went up to the top of the mountain, which is before the valley of Hinnom, to the west, which is at the end of the valley of Remphan towards the north. Lagarde is a research, scholar that describes the ritual. That these things have been translated, and this is what they understand the ritual to be. But the sacrifice of a pigeon is permitted to the worshiper of Bel to go through the first gate, and the second is a goat. You can go through the second gate, and so on. But the sacrifice of your child, not your child, but a child, is permitted a man to pass through a seventh gate into the very presence of Moloch. So if these are the 7 chakras, people, this is why 7 is the 7 planets. You have 7 levels to go to Mithraism, to Jupiter, because Jupiter is representative of Moloch. And I'll show that in the verses how they merge. So Saturn and Jupiter merge together.
I had one comment on this because I had thought about it, and what came to me was the Columbia disaster. Columbia was a sacrifice of a pigeon, sort of. This is just my thinking. This has no. And the second being the goat, and the IPEC goat stuff of the World Trade Center made me think of that.
Wow.
That is just my thinking, though. So you can take it or leave it.
Yeah, that's real interesting. Well, we know goats are significant. I'm going to show some little mind-blowing tidbits about IPEC goat in a minute. But so, here's the pagan sacrifice here. They would play drums to muffle the screams of the children, and this is something that really happened. It is in the Bible, but this is what they did it to. They did it to the temple of Jupiter. You have to understand that Solomon built 4 temples to 4 demons. These 4 demons are 8, 4 below and 4 above. And these 8 are from the Ogdo. They were birthed from the cosmic egg. And this Omphale stone and the foundation stone and the navel of the world is representative here, and that is what they do it for. And I just want to point that out. Their god is Saturn, and through Jupiter now, and so this is where
belly
it became.
button.
Yeah,
that was a belly button.
That's the Zayin is the sword. It might be the one that severs the cord.
Wow.
So the valley became a garbage dump for Jerusalem, and the refuse thrown into fuel and constantly burning fire. Jesus refers to a place of fire where the worm does not die and the fire is not quenched, completing the picture where bodies are thrown into hell to be burned up. And so this place around the temple is what it not is now, but was a trash dump. So David, this is the city of David. David conquered Jebusai, now Jerusalem. He named it the city of David. So Israel didn't completely separate from pagans, and so they intermarried. And they were together, just like Makkah. So you have to understand that even though David was a man after God's own heart, he married people that weren't. He had many wives, and one of his wives was a Nephilim's daughter. She was like an Anak, which is a hybrid. She probably wasn't very as tall as some of the giants, but because she was like a hybrid, and she was one that intermarried, and she married David, and so she also worshipped Asherah, and this is her stone here. She married his son, and she married his son's sons too. Luke 10, Jesus is talking here, and he said, I saw Satan fall like lightning from heaven, have given you authority to trample on snakes and scorpions and to overcome all the power of the enemy. Nothing will harm you. However, do not rejoice that the spirits submit to you, but rejoice that your names are written in heaven. And these are the people that have given their lives to Jesus Christ, and they believe in him and have asked him to come into their heart. These are people that believe in Jesus, and these, he was talking to his apostles. He gave them gift of knowing every language, which is a wonderful gift, because then there's not so much confusion. Then you understand everything, and you're not like me digging through a million words to try to find out what one thing means. So I wish I had that gift, but
and then
so
also too. Oh, I'm sorry, Kris. Satan falling like lightning. That's the symbol for Satan, and it's all about how you know, Satan is going to do, through the Antichrist, is going to do all kinds, or I should say probably the false prophet, all kinds of signs and wonders. And I think probably, you know, the temple is going to be a place where they may do all kinds of, you know, make lightning come down from heaven right there at the temple, you know, the rebuilt Solomon's temple, and do all kinds of, you know, signs and wonders using lightning, you know, to display, you know, the fake power, you know, that he has.
Yeah, the Bible
Yeah,
talks about that.
yeah, I'm actually curious about the Antichrist overcoming the beast, overcoming the two witnesses, and these powers being shown in that event. And that's kind of what I'm thinking about, such as with Elijah calling down fire. That's something similar. You know, it's just again one of these interesting things to ponder.
Yeah, for sure. Venus and Saturn are the only planets expressly mentioned in the Old Testament. Jupiter's in the Bible, the stars, names of the stars, the Pleiades, Mars, Orion, all of it's talked about in the Bible. The planets are also mentioned in Revelation. Hesperus is phosphorus. Hesperus is the evening star, the planet Venus in the evening. And in the Greek, Lucifer in Jerome's Latin and Vulgate were used to translate Hebrew Hillel. So we know Venus is Lucifer and Hillel. It's all, most people do understand that. Son of Shahar, God Dawn, in the Hebrew version of Isaiah 14:12. This is Eos, and she is the mother of Hesperus. And I'm working on something to get more in depth in that, to tie in the Gemini twins and how they're connected to Helena Troy and all of that stuff.
Isn't EOS also connected with the computer systems today? EOS, like operating systems or something?
Yeah, that word.
Maybe somebody can comment on that. Yeah.
So I just wanted to show a few more references. Is, you know, that Remphan, Saturn is worshipped by these elite people and by the Freemasons, and as Lucifer through this system of the planets and the chakras and the 7 chakras. But so Remphan is another word for Saturn in the Bible.
And that's the Star of David.
Kiyun, yeah. Well, it's not really his star. It's
yeah, it never was, but they call it that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Kiyun is another word for heathen god in Saturn. It means Saturn. And in Amos 5:26, it talks about the translated word as Saturn. And just to point this out, I know a lot of people already know this, but I'm just pointing this out for those people that don't know that the translations of Saturn in the Bible and where you can find it. So God says not to worship the planet, the sun, the moon, the stars, and he talks about their God that they're worshiping here at the temple, and they're sacrificing their children to him, which is Moloch. Moloch also means Saturn. And here's another word this is important here, and this shows the merging of Saturn with Jupiter, because we saw Satan fall like lightning. Zeus is lightning, and he represents the planet Jupiter. Sukkot is another word that is connected to Saturn. Sukkot, the divinity associated with the star by the prophet, is an alternative appellation for Ninurta, who is a planet Babylonian god merged with Saturn. So this god here is Marduk. He's Zeus. He's Ninurta, son of Thoth. And so this is what it represents. So if the Bible's talking about these words merging with Saturn, there you go. I'm glad I found this, you know, to understand even more. That I understood that Jupiter was the resurrected Saturn, but now I have, you know, more confirmation here, because, you know, we talked about up here where the Ogdode This is this is after the flood. This is dated after the flood. When you research all of the gods and who they were, and after the flood, and Khufu and his pyramid, and all of those things with the ritual with Casikemwe, his name is Ham. Now, these people on that bloodline of Ham were the Egyptians. They were, and they were circumcised. They, if you look up Jubilee, the garments of Jubilee, and do image searches, you'll find Hatshepsut, Khufu. A lot of the Egyptians wore the Jubilee garments back then. So I just wanted to, point that out too. Here's another word. Chuan is a statue, an idol. It is also in representative of Saturn. Chuan does translate to Saturn too. And, it is Bel and Moloch. Here's the verse, actually, 5:26-27 in Amos. It says, "But ye have borne the tabernacle of your god Moloch, and Chuan your images, your Saturn and his statues, the star of your god, which you made to yourselves. Therefore will I cause you to go into captivity beyond Damascus, says the Lord, whose name is the God of hosts." Here's the temple. I wanted to point some really interesting things out with CERN and the Temple of the Mount. They're right across from each other here, and I didn't get the how far in the miles and all that, but if anybody does and they post it, that'd be wonderful. I just didn't have time to do it. But here's Saturn. If you Google iPet-Go, it comes up to CERN. If you type in Saturn, it pops up CERN. You have to do it a certain way, and it's very interesting how that works. The Be Ready video is an Illuminati video. I posted it in our links if you want to watch it, and I played around with these numbers in the videos just to see what would come up. Federal Emergency Management Agency in Washington. So
interesting.
Here's the Temple Mount. So what I did was I typed in Temple Mount into Google Maps, and it comes up in this area here. Not this area where the stone is, but I typed in Temple Mount, eminent mosque on holy mountain site. Okay. After I typed that and I left it here on this image, I went ahead and typed in iPet-Go, and it switched to here, to the Dome of the Rock Islamic Shrine Housing Foundation Stone. So let me put that next to this so you can see it. So there you go.
That's interesting. Very interesting.
Yep. This you put this in Google, and that's what comes up. But there's two references here. You put goat in, and then the Islamic Shrine of housing the foundation stone comes up. I put iPet-Go 2 backwards in the map, and it came up to Pakistan Military Academy.
That's weird.
I put this is real interesting. You got to look up this thing. Okay. I put iPet-Go in backwards, and it came up to the Society of the Caballerians of Canada. And this website says that everybody's name has a meaning, and they break it down to what people's names mean, and it's like a physicist type website. It's very weird and interesting. So I put iPet-Go 2 in, and of course CERN pops up. So I just wanted to show that. I know that other people were making videos, Face Like the Sun, Enter the Stars, did a video on it, and I just thought, well, I'll try it out and see what comes up for me and play around with it and see what comes out. So, okay, here's the cave that's underneath. I know there's a cave that goes underneath the dome. You see it. You saw a picture of it up there that I showed where you could go underneath it and worship to the dead people. And You know, that's another thing. They worship the dead souls under there, and communicate with that through prayer or whatever they do. And they bow down to towards Mecca when they do it. They go down there, they bow down towards Mecca, and they pray. And they have altars underneath there too. This is a different part of the cave. This is Zedekiah's part. He was the last king of Judah. He was made king by Nebuchadnezzar II. There's no way that this cave was not named after him, because he's the only person that was ever named this that I know of. He had both of his eyes gouged out. His name was changed when he was placed on the throne, and so after the fall of Jerusalem, there's a person named Nebuzaradan. I've never found any information on him yet, and he was sent to destroy it. The city was plundered and razed to the ground. Solomon's temple was destroyed. Only a small number of vine dressers and husbandmen were permitted to remain in the land, and that's in Jeremiah 52:16. The prophet Jeremiah was his counselor, yet he was recognized that he did evil in the sight of the Lord in these verses here. And during this time, it was the summer month of Tammuz in Jeremiah 52. And I do believe Tammuz is the July something of this year. And I know that July in Septem, which is the 7th month in Roman, is September. So that's interesting. So here's the gate. I was just going to show another map. You know, here's Herod's gate. Here's Damascus gate. Jesus was hung on the cross. Here's the valley of Saturn going around this whole thing here where they're worshiping and murdering animals and children. Solomon had 70,000 carriers, 70,000, and 80,000 stonecutters, 80,000 in the hills. Wow. As well as 3,300 foremen who supervised the project and directed the workmen. In the king's command, they removed from the quarry large blocks of quality stone to provide a foundation of dressed stone for this temple. Sounds like Dome of the Rock to me. The craftsmen of Solomon, the craftsmen of Solomon and Hiram and the men of Gebal Byblos cut and prepared the timber and stone for the building of the temple. So Solomon was, he married Naamah and started to follow her ways. Hiram Abiff was really a pharaoh, and I know that he was the king of Tyre, but he was also a pharaoh. He was an Egyptian, and he was related to Tubal-Cain. And Tubal-Cain gave him a gift of like an axe or some kind of thing that he gave him, which was a gift he passed on to him. I do believe Hiram Abiff was from part of his bloodline was from the tribe of Dan. This wall is connected to the cave underneath, and I do believe that there is part of the cave that they say that is collapsing. And here's some stairs that go down to the Zedekiah cave. Here's Pope Benedict celebrating in Kidron Valley, doing some kind of ceremony here. See this stage? Mm-hmm. Yeah, so this is around the temple on that valley that we showed around it. These are Coptic Christians. They are walking towards the Mass in Kidron Valley. It separates the Temple Mount from the Mount of Olives. This is the Pope Benedict walking inside the Temple of the Mount for the first time. Here's Pope Francis kissing the Palestinian leader, telling him that he is an angel of light. He just did that.
Oh, goodness.
Yeah. I'll get to the Freemasons in a second here, but I just wanted to point it out in Nefertiti's tomb. was references to Helena Troy. I believe that she is the mother of King Tut, and I'm working on something with the Odyssey and all the connections with the Titans, the fire of Prometheus, and all of those things that I've been reading for many months, and I'm trying to figure some things out. But this is Sophia, and she is wearing the jewelry that Titus found. This is Helena Troy's jewelry. It's been confirmed that it is. And it looks a lot like the skull that the Vatican in Rome, he has this jewelry on this child. Could it possibly be King Tut? I don't know. But he wears the crown that has both DNAs on it, and which is the snake and the bird, and which is the moon and the sun god merged. So he wears both of them. She was the daughter of Zeus and Leda, and she is also a sister of the Gemini twins. And Castor and Pollux are talked about in the Bible too, but she was sister. There's 4 of them, and those 4, I do believe, represent the 4 deities: Set, Horus. I mean, not Set, Isis, Nephthys, and Osiris. Helena Troy was married, or she wasn't married to, but she was with Theseus, and she did have a son with him, but there's no information that you can find on that. And here is just another map that I put on here with the Genna, the Valley of Hinnom and Kidron, and then this area going down the temple, and then where Jesus was hung on the cross. Now, let's get to the Freemasons. The Freemasons Hall. Members of Freemason Society number among the many European tourists and visitors who have come to the cave after it was rediscovered in 1854. The Freemasons regard Solomon as the first biblical Freemason, and since the cave was popularly viewed as the quarry used by King Solomon in the building of the first temple, the Freemasons have held their traditional ceremonies during the past century in the main chamber of the cave. This is the main chamber of the cave. It's the biggest part here, this area. And they do a ceremony here once a year in this cave. So they call it Solomon's quarries. That says a lot. You know, Solomon built 4 temples to 4 demons.
Yeah, and you wonder why they're, so the Masons are, that's like major big big ritual there.
Yeah, here they are here outside of it in a long time ago. And this is Charles Warren, and he is one that says that this is his family, and this is, you know, he's tied to this cave, and I do believe he might have been, this was drawn, and I don't know exactly what time frame that he lived, but you see he's wearing the Templar's cross. This Pope wears this too. I do believe the Vatican, you know, has control and will control the temple whenever they're ready to. But this is a this is Sekhmet. She's Ptah's with Ptah's, I guess, his wife, and they're the parents of Khonsu, which is Dionysus, which represents the leg of the bull. But these are websites to Templars and Freemasons. They reference the Eye of Horus here, and just like the Vatican, you know, with Yahweh and the Tetragrammaton, in the churches with the eye, all-seeing eye, they all represent, they all, you know, have the Egyptian symbols here. That's tied to it, so that just shows you how much this is tied to this temple and this temple mount and this cave underneath. This is where they bow down to the grave of Hiram Abiff. They do a ceremony. They were thinking that he was going to be raised and the spirit of the Antichrist was going to come in him, but something happened during that time. I'm not sure if Solomon decided that he was not going to follow through with it, but I'm not sure what happened, but something happened, and they're waiting for this this to happen again, so that way they can do this ceremony once again. Here's another website with a Grand Lodge, and this is the wing of Isis. This is the hole here that we showed before this portal. This represents the navel of the Omphale stone right here. This is another picture of the cave. This was Ron Wyatt, and he was speaking in this cave, and he says that he found the Ark of the Covenant and did samples, blood samples. But he died the next year, and then the Ark of the Covenant was supposedly not there anymore inside of the walls. I guess there's some text that say, huh?
I was going to say, according to the Jews, they say, the ones who are the head of the Temple Mount Institute, they say they have the Ark of the Covenant, and when it's time, they're going to reveal it. That's what they say. So
I agree that they have it. I agree they know where it is. Yeah. When it's time for the temple, their temple, to be rebuilt, then they'll pull it out.
Yeah, and that's an electromagnetic box. I mean, that's where their god, I guess, would go. They would speak to them, and it would be in the holiest of holies. That's where the temple split when Jesus was hung on the cross. And so, yeah, that ark would sit on top of the stone in all the temples that they had, and it was a big part of their worship and everything with the priest. So this was the Damascus Gate. I just showed the picture of where the cave is near this, where the entrance is. And here's a picture from high above into the city. And here's a verse from Revelation 14. It says, "And I looked, and lo, a lamb stood on the Mount Zion, and with him 144,000 having his father's name written on their forehead." So I just wanted to add that verse and let people know that Jesus is going to come, and the Bible says that that when the Antichrist, when he rises, before he rises from the abyss, God seals his people on their forehead, and nothing can harm his children. And so yeah, we just wanted to do this video today to show people what the Temple of the Mount is, and kind of get people a visual of this temple. It's not God's holy temple. It's not well, it might be their God's temple, but it's not Jesus Christ. It's not his Father's temple, because God is in heaven. His temple is in our hearts, like Heidi said, and we don't need a physical temple. That's why Jesus said, tear down this temple to raise in 3 days, and it did. He rose again and ascended to heaven, and he's coming back. And I just think that we're so close to this because of all the things that are happening.
Amazing. Amazing.
Yeah, with the Pope and everything else. But
well, you did a great job on the presentation of the Dome of the Rock and the Omphale stone. And once we got into this dig series in the Omphale stone, it really opened me up as far as seeing that the gates are opening up the gates to the world. And Heidi's talked about the 9 gates of hell and being connected to the navel of, they believe this is the navel of the beast, the belly of the beast, and all this kind of stuff. So the symbolism of the Dome of the Rock is much bigger than I had thought, because I've listened to folks for years talk about building the temple, the third temple, the physical one for the time of Jacob's trouble. In the Judaic tradition of Judaism, they want to build the temple, they could build it somewhere else up there on the mount, and people talk about the locations over here to the south or to the north or to the east. And I'm going, this Omphale stone says, if you look at it, you have to build it where the mosque, the Dome of the Rock, is. It has to be built there, because nobody talks about that Omphale stone. what it represents to all these occult, these Freemasons, the OTO, to all these secret society Kabbalists who worship in these caves underneath, right? They're worshiping in the caves underneath here. And
no telling what they're doing in there.
Yeah, you don't know what they're doing in the belly of the beast over there. And so this stone is central to what they're doing. Then we have the UFO footage over the Dome of the Rock that we didn't show in this show, but it shows the UFO hovering right over the dome and zipping right up in the air. Then we got it connected to CERN. We got it connected to the Hoover Dam. We got it connected to, we got a lot of connections to this Dome of the Rock. So the wars that people have been talking about forever, I wanted to comment on where we are. It seems that Benjamin Danoon and Begley have been, which is great that they showed some nice videos this past week, but we were going into talk about this anyways, that there's a transition going on with the hijacking of the holy sites of Jerusalem by the Vatican. And the Vatican is hijacking the political power over there. And then they talked about the establishing of a checkpoint between Tel Aviv and Jerusalem, and talking about and making the city international. And then we have the Abbas with the Palestinian state and half of Jerusalem being split. And folks know about the judgment of when you divide God's chosen area that he designates, the Israel, the Jerusalem. He designates this in the Bible where he's going to come down on the Mount of Olives and stuff. But you go into this area and start fooling around with the geography as the world's doing, you're calling into major judgment. And so the battles I wanted to talk about real quick, just a reference on the end of what you presented, was that where are we in Bible prophecy? There's three kind of battles around with the peoples of the surrounding area. One talks about the Psalm 83 battle. One talks about the Ezekiel 38 battle, and another one, which I think is the one that's going to happen the quickest, is the Jeremiah 49. And I just wanted to read a couple paragraphs out of Bill Salas's book on this, because this is judgment on Elam. In here he says, this demise of Meshach and Tubal seems to be the result of the participation in the Ezekiel 38 invasion. Why would Ezekiel write about Elam? So the judgment of Elam, this is where we're getting into. Meshach and Tubal in chapter 32, and Persia, Meshach and Tubal in chapter 38. One plausible answer is Ezekiel intentionally omitted Elam from the Gog and Magog coalition. The omission of Elam from Ezekiel 38 invaders is probably because Elam is not part of the epic battle. Elam may not be a participant because the disaster predicted in Jeremiah 49, verses 34 through 39, may occur prior to the formation of the Ezekiel 38 Confederacy. And so Elam is presently is part of Persia or Iran, and a lot of people locate this at the Bashir nuclear power plant that people have been talking about for forever, a preemptive nuclear or a preemptive strike on that. And the judgment on Elam, the judgment on Iran for supporting the persecution of Israel through terrorism is it kind of makes sense to me that as the Vatican moves in with siding with Palestine and Obama sides with Palestine, bring judgment on the United States. It brings judgment on Iran for supporting the Hamas and the terrorists that lob missiles into Israel. So what I see going on here, this Palestine becomes the center of the battle here. And I stepped out for a minute. I mean, you guys probably did cover the battle between the sun god and the moon god. But here we have this this prophecy of Elam thing. I think what happens, and this is looking more likely, is that the Iran is attacked by Israel at some point. Now, you know, that would be, I think that comes before the Ezekiel 38 and also the I believe the Psalm 83. So it seems like that this Jeremiah 49 seems to occur, in my way of looking at it. Then the Psalm 83 wipes out all the folks in the surrounding areas, and then that leaves the outer ring, which is the Ezekiel 38, to come in and wipe Israel off the map at a later date. So, but what we've discovered, what Kris and Heidi have discovered with this, is that we're looking at this moon god and sun god thing playing out over this Amphala stone. Right now we have the moon god worshippers over the Amphala stone, but as they raise Apollyon, or as they raise Osiris, we're going to see the sun worship folks come in, wipe out the mosque, the Dome of the Rock, and put their Masonic Antichrist Third Temple up there as the representation of the sun worship. So that's my take on what's going on. What do you guys think?
Yeah, the temple of Apollo is right there under CERN, you know. So you got CERN and the temple of Apollo, and then you got the temple on the mount, which is a moon god temple.
Mm-hmm.
So you have the sun and the moon, and we have CERN starting up in September, and we have a lot of holidays that are right there, you know, like the Day of Atonement and those dates, and you know, it's just it's mind blowing. I forgot that clip, Tim, but it talks about Yom Kippur and the dates, which is 9, 10, 11, and then and so if you look at the calendar and then you see 9 and then you have 10, which was I don't have it in front of me.
Yeah, Yom Kippur is the 10 on there. So we have these like it's like Tishri 9, 10, and 11 or something. But it's right in that 22nd, 23rd, and 24th of September. But if you look at it, you see the IX for the 9, and you see the XI for the 11th, and right in the middle, the 10 is the 9/23 date. So we see that what everybody's been looking at is 9/11, this IXXI, happening right on the 9/23, right in between. And you start going, this is not coincidental. I don't think you can fabricate this, that something significant is supposed to occur on that day. What it is, I have no idea. And that's what half the YouTube is filled up with speculation about 9/23. Mr. Caddy's stuff from 9/15 to 9/28. Renee M's 9/23. Lots of stuff going on there.
Yeah, I mean,
and
yeah.
Well, yeah, and to kind of add to what you were saying, Tim, the whole I'm the same way as you. I never knew the significance of that stone. Mm-hmm. I mean, you always hear Dome of the Rock, Dome. Well, the stone is the rock. Well, the rock is the most significant part of that temple there, or you know what they want to build the temple over. And you think about all the mystery religions, the Rosicrucians, and you had mentioned to me earlier about the Arthurian legend. Well, I think that is representative. That stone is representative of the Holy Grail, of there's a reason why it's called the belly of the beast, the navel of the world. And that just symbolizes that it's the life-giving to these mystery religions and the Masons and whatnot. It just symbolizes to them the essence of life, and it all seems to be centering right there on the Temple Mount area, which is really, really interesting to me. And if you think about, I thought this is kind of a little tributary, but I thought about, you know, if they're calling that area the navel of the world and the belly of the world, you have to wonder, well, I said to myself, well, what would be the umbilical cord? And maybe the umbilical cord is something having to do with computers. And with your dig series you had alluded to in the previous video, being plugged in to that navel of the world, which I just happened to see a video, and I'll just mention this real quick. I think I had sent you a video. Taylor Swift just came out with a new video, which happened to be called, I think it was called Bad Blood, and I went, whoa. Bad blood. And in one of the scenes in her video, she's standing in a black outfit surrounded by a few women in white outfits, but the women in the white outfits have a extension cord connected to their helmet on their head, plugged in to an outlet. And I was going, well, maybe that's kind of a symbolic reference to the umbilical cord being connected to the navel. And I thought, wow, that was pretty interesting. So it's that area is, I don't think I know I've never realized the significance of how that's going to play out with the risen Apollyon, rising from the ashes, and his significance of why that area is going to be the hub of everything, the false signs and wonders, possibly the image of the beast, with the maybe it'll be some sort of holographic image or something having to do with the quantum computer. We don't know, but it just seems like that is going to be the focal point in these end days.
Yeah, I think the parallels that we're talking about here is if we go back to our 369 connection to Saturn, the sun and moon, we're talking about sun and moon fighting over this omphalos stone here. And Saturn is representative also of the computer that people, the black box, the computer, that kind of stuff. But that, to me, makes it interesting that CERN's connected to this. And so CERN is the computer, or the AI, or the adiabetics that Anthony's been working on. And I see the parallel between the 369 and the CERN and the Apollyon rising sun worship temple rebuilding on that omphalos, and the Venus, or the Isis. Her time is, she's put him back together and he's coming into prominence. So she is being removed from sitting on the stone, and he is standing on the stone. That's how I see this thing playing out. I see sun and moon worship, and the Vatican is nothing but sun and moon worship. If you look at their little monstrance with their as they call it, the cookie, their little sun disk or whatever in there. If you put the Vatican with ISIS or Islam, you get Chrislam, and you get sun and moon worship, and they all come from the same place. I know people who are Catholic don't like to hear that, but that's why you come out of Babylon. At some point you come out of Babylon. So that's my take on it. I think it makes sense.
Yeah.
And then everybody connected with their own computers to the central computer.
Mm-hmm.
Who knows what they're, the image of the beast is going to be blasted all over the world through their computers, or, in widescreens everywhere, through that adiabatic quantum computer.
Yeah, we had talked about that. You provided that. I told you, Heidi, you provided that key for me as far as understanding the Satan unplugged from the light of Christ, or the light of God, in the phosphorus light. And of course, I was writing on this, but I'll just throw that out here, that he feeds off of these demonic or these fallen angels feed off of like to hijack the worship that goes to God by putting themselves, the angels who left their first estate. They left what they were responsible for. they were responsible for carrying out their directive in the angelic realm. They left it, and so now they want to receive the worship that goes to God. So this image of the beast, this idol worship, as in traditional idol worship, this hologram, to me, will be just like they do with these Illuminati rituals at these football stadiums when you see Madonna or you see Taylor Swift. They are receiving the worship when they're doing their rituals, and it's being funneled in their rituals to their source, which is these demonic things that they follow, whatever, these Kabbalists, however and it's a vampiric energy thing, where the false light is Lucifer. He's in the darkness. He's the phosphorus light, the absorbing light. He absorbs the worship from the soul energy of humanity, and that's what he feeds off of. So this is your vampire story. I'll elaborate on that in what I finish writing about, but that's really, to me, where this vampirism is coming. So this holographic beast is this electronic idol that absorbs the worship of all those who bow down, and there we go back to Nebuchadnezzar, forcing everybody to bow down to the golden image. And this is the movie Transcendence. Here you go. That it makes it's like getting so clear that that's how close we are.
I feel the same way. Yeah.
And I always read, you read, you think, well, they're going to place a statue. Well, maybe it's going to be like a living statue, instead of just, I always think of a statue as just, made of marble. No, maybe it'll be a 3D living statue that you can talk to, and it can talk to you. And if you bow down and worship and you take the mark, you will be connected to that image of the beast. You take that.
You're jacked into the hive at that point.
Yeah, you're connected with your computer umbilical cord to the hive mind. Yeah.
Yeah, you're networked, right? And that's what.
You're networked, yeah.
Well, doesn't Lucifer want to be omnipresent and all-powerful, omnipotent and omnipresent? So it's like, how else do you become all-present unless you're jacked into the virtual reality counterfeit world that you create to be connected to your adiabetics and everything jacked in? You're all jacked into Lucifer computer adiabetic systems. So that's how you become omniscient and all-knowing, because you got adiabetics, these quantum computers cycling through all the information all the time to never let you not be connected to what's going on.
Yeah, and when you take the mark, you're in the matrix. You're there. You're in there, and you're not getting out.
No.
You're not getting out.
and this all came from this Omphallus stone, from what we were doing.
Yeah.
All this stuff.
Yeah. What is that stone? That stone's some crazy stone.
They want to get a hold of your mind, and they don't want your heart to work. They don't want you to tap into the love of Christ, and and so people that do, and they give their life to Christ, their name is written in the book of life, and Jesus is going to come for those that are written in His book, and so it's just unfortunate the trick of Satan with the 7 chakras and the 7 planets, the 7 gates of hell, and which are 9, but there's 7 that became 8 with the Ogdode, and so it's unfortunate that there's people tricked through religion, through all, Jesus, there's no religion in the Bible. Jesus didn't want people to have religion. He just wanted us to love Him and follow Him. And if you want to know who God is, just read all about Jesus, and you'll know who God is.
Absolutely. He'll tell you. He'll tell you.
He says anyone that calls on my name shall be saved.
Amen.
Jesus is the gate.
Yep. The only one.
All the 9 gates of hell are, you know, I was kind of theorizing the 9 gates of hell that are all around the world that the Bible says is more than one gate. I always thought there was one gate until I actually looked it up. It's plural. There are 9 gates of hell representing, you know, the 9, and they, I think, you know, just theorizing, this is my personal, they're all going to converge into that one main area of the Temple Mount and the dome. It's going to be the main area where they're all going to converge. The gates, you know, through which the fallen angels can emerge from, is what I've been thinking.
Yeah, and we'll follow up on some of the connections to this Mithras egg and the cosmic egg in the future, which is more elaborate as far as being even more connected to this storyline. But yeah, this the Dig series showed the opening of the gates underneath the Dome of the Rock. Of course, their point was that World War III starts with the destruction of the Dome of the Rock, which is true. That would drive a fanatical thing. I'm not exactly sure how that'll work. If it's CERN just clicks on in the middle of some missile launch from then I guess I'm getting an echo.
Well, no, Heidi was talking about the conductor, you know, that the mountains are like conductors, you know, energy conductors, and with that plane that crashed on that mountain, and I think Anthony talked about the energy, and so yeah, I mean, there's some kind of connection. That might have been a test run for all we know, but you know, they do have, that's probably what CERN is going to be used for. I believe that it possibly, you know, inadvertently, you know, no one's going to know it is, but it could be to, you know, they could use it to destroy it with some kind of electromagnetic energy or lightning or, you know, something like that. And then that way, like Heidi said, it could possibly be, they could say, well, that was the hand of God. You know, he came down and he blew that thing up. And so now we have to build a new temple together. And, yeah. But the belief and the
God
religion.
wants this to be done. Yeah, you know, I mean, like, you know, they could say, well, God wants this thing to be built. You know, they can say, well, it's God. God blew this up, but they, you know, I'm thinking they're going to use CERN to maybe blow up the temple, and then they're going to say, well, God did it, you know, so we have to build this now, you know, look, everybody, let's, you know, go, yay, the temple is being built.
Yeah, I mean, interestingly enough, it's right across from where the temple is, CERN is. It's just right diagonally there, and it's right shot straight across. And then it's above Apollo's temple, which is the sun god, and then that temple's a moon god temple. So it's just there's no coincidence in that, and so we'll just have to kind of research more and talk to Anthony and.
I think I lost Kris there for a second. She dropped off. Well, we'll go ahead and wrap up the show since I was having a little audio problems right there. But we'll be back with Anthony Patch on Thursday at 1 p.m. With his new research. And, of course, every show seems to be building on it on the other shows. Thank you, Heidi, for coming today. And, of course, Kris did a great job. Oh, there she is.
Yeah.
Hey, I'm back. Whatever, I got kicked off.
I was just wrapping up telling them about Anthony coming on Thursday, and then thanking you for the slideshow, and Heidi also, and that we'll just pick up at 1 p.m. Eastern on Thursday. So if you all want to just wrap up and say goodbye, and then we'll get on with our day and get back together for Thursday.
Okay, sounds good. Thanks for watching, everybody. Thanks, Heidi.
You're welcome.
All
Thank you,
right.
Tim.
Yeah, thank you very much. That was great. I really enjoyed it. That was super. So I hope everybody else out there to leave your comments on the YouTube channel, Facebook, End Times Matrix. We'll try to any comments or anything you want to add to the discussion, go ahead and leave them there, and we'll review them. Thanks for your time. Thanks for watching the show, and everybody have a great day. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Whoops. I guess that's... She fell off again. Well, we'll just go ahead and leave the call, and that'll end the show. She usually signs off for me. So we just had a little bit of technical difficulties at the end there. But everybody have a great day. She's back again. We're having a comedy time here. Yeah.
Okay, hold on a minute here.
You're going to stop the show?
That's what happens live. Live.
1,
Yeah,
2, 3. Sign off. Sign off.
Yeah, I think what's going to happen is I don't have the button to stop the show, so we're all going to have to log off of here.
All log off together. Okay. We'll talk to you all
Goodbye.
later. Bye-bye.
Bye.